Stephen. Looks like
Sam.
everyone's there. That's wonderful. Thank you. Changing the whole order today. This is the beautiful on the move way that we're going to do it. Stephen, I'm going to hand over to you first. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name's Stephen Hutchins. I'm the marketing director at High Res Studios. We're a video games publisher, developer, esports runner, all the fun stuff that's happening out there basically with our games, all in the competitive online multiplayer space. And our main titles are Smite, Paladins, Rogue Company, and Realm Royale.
Wonderful. And you were kindly enough to prompt me into getting these events together. So thank you for that, Nud. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for organising. They've been great.
Well, I always do as I'm told. I mean, that's the key. Ollie, over to you now. Tell us a little bit about yourself and London United.
Thanks, Sam. Good afternoon, everyone. Very nice to be here. Can't see you, but I've seen as a healthy attendance. I'm Ollie. I'm founder, chief exec of London United. Actually, a little bit like Patrick, came into esports from a traditional sports background, having been at the Premier League and F1. And I run London United as an esports organisation that is promoting healthy lifestyle and addressing social issues using the medium of gaming and esports. So we have grassroots gamers, we have content creators, and we run campaigns to address social issues.
That's a lot to take in. We'll come back to that in a second and really drill down into that. But that's a fascinating setup. I'll be interested to hear, sort of the motivations behind that and how it's gone. We can't really talk about, business progression and meeting brands and creating opportunities without looking at what's happened in the last just over a year now. Stephen, how's the business been affected in the last sort of 13 or 14 months, if at all?
It's been a busy year, to put it mildly. Ultimately, we've gone from having what was a really strong content pipeline, both on the game side and the esports side, and just seen the last year really amplify what we already had in the works. We've seen big changes, though, in that sense as well. The obvious one being when we've done things like our live events, we've not been able to bring not only an audience to the experience, but also have to have the players playing from home. But that in some ways has also helped us bring new opportunities for the brands to the forefront as well. So being able to do more deeper engagements on the broadcast side, figure out new ways to integrate stuff on the technology side within the games to really help bring that full experience across for everyone who's getting involved with the esports side of things.
Well, I'm pleased to hear it's not been hampered anyway. We've seen some amazing stats for the video game industry in the last 13 or 14 months anyway, with more consumer engagement and more online participation naturally as people are looking for that form of entertainment. And Oliver, from your perspective, how have things been going?
Well, it was interesting because we set up in 2019 with a model to host physical events to find grassroots gamers. And the whole model was, you come to our events, you try out, and we'll sign you, nurture, develop, educate you as grassroots gamer on a path to pro. And we held events addressing social issues in tandem, for example, grime against knives at Lewisham Shopping Centre. And then suddenly when a pandemic sets in, you've got to turn your business model on its head. So we just pivoted to online and started to address the issues through FIFA and loneliness and nutrition and League of Legends and anti-racism through NBA 2K and FIFA and so on. So it was a very busy year, but I think we adapted quite well. I think things like production are a different beast when you're running it remotely to having everybody in one room. But I think like the nature of the industry, we've all got used to it. You heard Patrick earlier talking about how the LEC adapted. So I think we've all just become quite accustomed and quite interested to see when we come up the other end, what we revert back to, whether we go to a hybrid or, we go back to physical completely or online. I think it's going to be a hybrid for most people.
Nothing like having a business model that gets totally shook up. But you've been, Oliver, some amazing announcements coming out from you in the past year, and some stuff with Rio Ferdinand that came out, last week, maybe a week before?
Last week.
Last week. I mean, just amazing that. Let's talk about we're trying to talk about the engagement opportunities for brands and how you can work with them. How have you found working with brands, Oliver, and maybe some examples to share with us?
Well, I think, and I go back to Patrick's point about education, I think the esports and in fact the gaming sector is quite convoluted. There are so many entry points, whether it's with the publishers, whether it's in-game, whether it's with the platforms, the tournament providers, it could be teams, organizations. It is quite complicated, and for brands that know they want to get into esports but don't quite know what they want to do, it can be overwhelming. So again, through my relationships, we work out like who we think is relevant and wants to target the audience that we are engaging with. But our offering is slightly different. We are not Excel. We are not Fnatic. We are a lower tier organization that is addressing social issues. That is our USP. We're not a performance team. Yes, We have now got a Valorant team and we want to be successful, similar entry to Excel. But that's about brand visibility for us. And that's also about providing inventory to the brands. So when we look at the brands, we say, look, we have these offerings. We have gamers, we have the grassroots gamers, we have the female content creators, we have a TikToker who's interested in fitness, and we have the campaigns. Now, we know what you do, but no, there's no one better to tell us what you want to do. So let's have an open discussion. We have a lot of inventory. We're broadcasting on Twitch. Our last stream with Yacht, which I'll come to in a second, had 150,000 unique viewers. So there is engagement, the content is interesting, but you almost have to tell us a little bit about what you're trying to achieve, because it has to be authentic, as David said. You have to be savvy, you've got to do a bit of research. With Yop, who came in, so we did a Mayor of London championships in various boroughs in December, and Yop, who are owned by General Mills, own Häagen-Dazs, came in as a sponsor, but they had never done anything in esports before. So it was so for us, it's almost like, come and dip your toes in and see if it works, or let's see if we can tweak it going forward. And that's really the way we work with brands. We have our targets. Yeah, we're never going to do something with betting and gambling for what we stand for at the moment. But from a fitness perspective, and the non-endemic brands, there are plenty out there looking to enter this space. They just need a little bit of finessing. They need to understand what are the activation points. Some of them have never even utilized Twitch. Some of them don't understand why people are watching people playing on Twitch. I say, well, you go and watch someone play football, don't you? So it's not too dissimilar. But once you start talking about it and you explain how the interaction and engagement works, and you show them the numbers, they realize it's a space they got to play. So it's just a case of what works for them.
Yeah, it's interesting, the approach to make sure that the brands are genuine and actually to focus on brands that you think represent what you want to represent as a company, to try and get that balance right. Stephen, your games are slightly different in that respect. In terms of approaching brands and integrating them, how have you found that process in the past?
Yeah, so I mean, actually some of it's very similar to what Ollie's talking about just then as well. It's about coming across in an authentic way for that brand and figuring out which is the right angle to approach us and our audience with. Our benefit is that as a publisher and developer and broadcaster, we can offer the full end-to-end experience, from be that on the esports event itself, being the sort of title sponsor to that, or having your brand invested in that. You could be in the actual game itself. You can have your character or mascot of your company turned into something within the game, for example. You could be a part of the teams, and the big change that we have there this year is that we now fully own the team structure and the league structure in a way that we've changed quite dramatically to our previous years. But this gives you as a brand many different aspects of how you can reach our audience, and also gives you more touch points throughout the week than you would have, say, on a traditional sport where you're maybe just there for the weekly football match. It can now be a daily, recurring message that's in front of the player or in front of the viewer in many different ways. As mentioned, on the team side, that's really quite different for us this year, where we now have full ownership of the teams and how the players are represented within that. We also get the benefit there of being able to pay them a higher salary off the back of it and giving them sponsorship opportunities. So if you want to be involved at that player level, again, there's another different angle for you to approach as a brand. But it really comes down to that point Ollie was raising a minute ago of like, what's the authentic way? What's the right way for you to bring that message across that you're looking to present to your audience as well, or as even to our audience with your particular message?
And is that a difficult thing to identify, that authentic message? With so many options available, you talk about the games, the players, there's so much content. How do you sort of match those things? Is there a process for that?
It's an open discussion, ultimately. You've got to sort of approach it from each brand's own perspective in terms of what they're trying to figure out for their audience. We heard David talking about the likes of Mercedes there a minute ago. They're going to have a very different type of set of goals than a smaller local brand is. And so it's going to be an open discussion with them just to figure out what makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, that's also fine to come up as well. But ultimately, you're generally going to find a way that's authentic and feels natural to present, be that in the game, in the esports broadcast side of things. Otherwise, you're not going to want to put it out there because it's just not going to resonate with the audience when they see it.
And we talk about, thank you for that, Steve. We talk about resonating, Ollie, and you've got this social issues approach, which is fascinating. Do you think that opens up more opportunities for brand engagement, or are you perhaps Are you making it more difficult for yourself, more complicated for yourself? Does that not matter to you? You've got your principles, you're sticking to them. If the brands want to work for it, then that's fine. I mean, how do you see that working out?
I think honestly it's a bit of both, because sometimes you can be viewed as a CSR opportunity or a charity, and you have to, we're not a social enterprise. We're actually a business that cares about these issues and is using these issues to, build out a monetizable audience, quite frankly, one that's engaged, one that brands want to engage with. But there is a challenge, because you go through the door of a brand and immediately say, oh, we need to speak to our CSR person. No, actually, you've got to speak to us. It's about esports. There is a purpose angle to it, which actually should make it even more interesting for you. So that's what we try and do. We try and flip it on its head.
That's interesting. So, where is the approach into brands to have these conversations? So it might be on the CSR side, it might be on the marketing side. From your experience, Stephen, do all the brands now have a designated person that looks after this, or is it still something that gets passed around a little bit? Or are they all trying to get involved? I mean, how does that play out?
It really varies by the size of the company, and right. Also where they've come from in terms of their heritage. If you're approaching a bigger traditional company, they'll often have one person who's a big esports fan, or they have one particular game that they're a fan of, and that'll be their angle to try and pitch that within the organization. But other organizations will come from a more like youth-oriented focused area, and they'll therefore know a little bit more about the space and therefore bring a bit of experience to it as well. And the discussion will just unfold in a very different way with the type of partner you're talking with then as well. It's like what makes sense from their perspective in terms of what they know already, what additional knowledge can you bring to the table, and how can you help create that really sort of win-win situation where everyone's understanding that they're going to get a great partnership out of it. And that's something we're looking for as well. It's like we want to make sure a partner feels comfortable with us when they're talking to us, and that they know they're going to get a good result out of their campaign or their integration. We don't want them to be getting nervous that they're getting taken for a ride, because that's also happened to some companies in the past. There's been some bad examples of that. We want to make sure that we're not that. We want to make sure we're giving whoever's involved with us a great experience, and they want to then come back for another season or another integration at some point in the future.
That's a really positive message, and we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of looking at bad cases. Ollie, you've just announced your Rio Ferdinand partnership. What's that looking like? What's the objectives behind that?
Yeah, so on the 30th of May, we're going to be hosting another United Against Racism stream, this time with Rio and his foundation. It's about promoting diversity, but it's also about empowering young people in the UK. We're going to be looking at how society is handling equality, how has society moved on since George Floyd a year on, with young people having made a film. We'll be bringing in, darts player Devin Peterson, who grew up in South Africa, Miles Stevenson from Raksu, a whole host of other celebs to play in a FIFA Pro-Am. And the whole idea is around interspersing the gaming content with the educational messaging. So it's a platform that has got potential to get huge reach, as you know, with Twitch, which maybe the foundation hasn't utilized in the past. And we've seen when we've worked with other charities, a very good platform for raising awareness. Not always so great at raising money, but actually just from an awareness perspective for that charity and brand to be in and around Twitch and being able to tell people what they do and putting in video content to showcase that, we worked with Street League, they brought out their participants to our event. It's just a very good opportunity to work with a great partner like Rio Ferdinand Foundation. So that's happening on the 30th of May.
That's amazing. That's really positive. We'll keep an eye out for that. And Stephen, final word from you. What should we be looking out for Hi-Rez in the next few months?
So we've just this last weekend started season 8 of Smite's Pro League, which is a great success. We've seen around 20,000 concurrent viewers on that steadily throughout the weekend, which is really solid. And like I mentioned earlier, we've got this new league format, this new team ownership structure. Really looking forward to just growing that, building out these brands for the teams, building out their opportunities, and also for our new title sponsor, Alienware, bringing them the great opportunities and showing what we can do across the many different sides of the business that we can offer them. So yeah, very exciting set of partnerships to come. A few more things to announce this year as well, which are very exciting, but unfortunately can't quite share this just yet, but it's going to be
that's fine. Yeah, great. And thank you very much. Busy schedules, really appreciate you giving your time up today. Thanks very much to Ollie and to Stephen.